Welcome to another episode of HSF Conversations, the video podcast of the Helvis Society Forum, where we talk about theology, ministry, spirituality, and culture. I'm very excited to have Rebekah Morgan with us today. She is the wife of fellow contributor Phillip Morgan. She graduated with her degree in special education and is homeschooling her 5 children on their small homestead. So she is not very busy at all, but we're glad that she has taken the time to be here this morning and talk to us some about homeschooling. We've done a previous episode about different schooling options that families have. Phillip Morgan interviewed Dr. Stephen Beck for that episode, if you'd like to go look at just weighing your different options about what schooling options are out there for our kids today. But we wanted to do a little bit of a deeper dive into homeschooling, and so I asked Megan if she would come talk to us today about that. So, Megan, how long have you been homeschooling your kids?
I would say formally about 6 years. My oldest is in 5th grade now. There were some less formal preschool years for that, but honestly, as far as the formal education starting at kindergarten, it would be 6 years now. All right.
And did you know from the very beginning that you would homeschool, or when did you decide that you would homeschool them?
Well, going into our marriage, Phillip and I had discussions about what our roles would be and expectations and desires for our family would look like. And we both knew that if the Lord blessed us with children, that we wanted it to be where I could stay home and raise them and homeschool them. He grew up with a homeschool background, so that was not unrealistic or strange to him in any way. Mm-hmm. For me, I grew up in a public school background, and I knew I did not want to be there.
Yeah.
And so I had several friends who either went to Christian school or who were homeschooled. And so I already had kind of gone into it thinking, I want to do this differently. I would like to homeschool our kids. So that is kind of how we came to that decision.
Yeah. So now you've been at it, the formal years for 6 years, and coming from your background in special education, how did you first approach homeschooling when you started, and do you feel like it's changed? And if so, how has your approach to homeschooling changed?
It has definitely changed throughout the years, and a lot of that has dealt with my own education and learning throughout those years, and just things that delved into that I did not know when I went into it. So you mentioned I have a special education background. With that degree, there was also general education classes that I took. So basically, I almost went into my preschool years with our oldest very school atmosphere. Like, I wanted to have my little classroom in our house and have my box curriculum, and we're going to learn these things and these hours, and this is how school is going to look at home for us. And quickly throughout the years, after just being exposed to more books and podcasts, I really started thinking, wait a minute, there is more opportunity here than I'm really giving it. And so now we really do approach life as a whole, our atmosphere, our discipline, our life as school. And so it's not just from 8 to 3 o'clock we're going to be school time.
Yeah.
It's our life.
Yeah.
So
do you still, you talked about starting out maybe with a box curriculum or just kind of more laid out things. Do you still use some of those things today, or you've shifted some?
So overall, there are some things that I always have said, I'm not just throwing everything out that's more formal or organized. Some people in the homeschool world will do what they call as unschooling, which looks completely different from what you would think of as a school atmosphere. But for me, I really feel like I have kind of branched on to a classical approach to education, where in those early years it more is about memorization and just getting foundations in their hats, so that later on, when we start getting more into dialect and rhetoric, they are better writers and thinkers and can pursue wisdom more. And so for us, there are absolutely curriculums like our math curriculum. I'm so thankful, even though I love math, but I'm so very grateful that I can say, here, go do your math lesson today, and not have to facilitate or make up some lesson for them to do for that. So that is, one area where we definitely use curriculum. Our writing curriculum is another one for my older son that we use. But, some of the younger ages are definitely less structured, in the sense of I've opened a book or curriculum and said, this is what we're going to do with them.
Yeah.
It's kind of just a combination, honestly. We really try to enjoy our life together and have built-in moments throughout the day that are just open opportunities for us to learn and grow together as a family.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So tell me about some of the books that you've been reading over your career that have informed you, that have helped you make some shifts.
I actually have a few with me because I didn't write them down. But the first one that I just always recommend for anyone starting out, and even if they're not there yet, but no, they're wanting to be, is Teaching from Rest, a homeschooler's guide to unshakable peace. It is by Sarah McKenzie, and it's just a very approachable book and really talks about enjoying the process and learning. The next one I would say was Consider This, Charlotte Mason and the Classical Tradition by Karen Glass. This is one that really, there's different philosophies in home education, but Charlotte Mason is definitely one that is near and dear to my heart, and just I feel like she has a very good approach to children, but I also like the classical education, so this book was right up my alley, and they do mesh together. Don't have to be enemies of each other. The next one I would just say that was a really good read. It's been a few years now, but Beauty in the Word, Rethinking the Foundation of Education by Stratford Caldecott. It was a really good book. Just really opened my eyes to think, it can be a little bit more than what I might have learned in college. Mm-hmm. So that was one that was kind of an eye-opener for me. Lately, I have been reading The Convivial Homeschool, Gospel Encouragement for Keeping Your Sanity While Living and Learning Alongside Your Kids by Misty Winkler. This is a pretty brand new book within the last couple years that Misty put out, and the thing I like about this one is it is broken up into 30 short chapters, so you really could read one chapter a day.
Yeah.
If you wanted to prolong that some, you could, but it's meant to be able to kind of just get little bite-sized pieces, which is nice. The last one I would just say is Home Education by Charlotte Mason. This is actually one of 6 volumes of hers. So there's a whole series of home education by Charlotte Mason, but she really opens the eyes to me about just the importance of being in nature and just this whole well-rounded view of growing and learning, and she's just pretty cool. I like listening to her, reading her and listening to her. The other thing that I would say is not in book form, but Scolay Sisters, they have a podcast, and I really enjoy their perspectives on stuff. There's about 3 contributors who sometimes are all on there, sometimes take turns interviewing other people, but they all have a classical approach to their education, but not necessarily played out the same in each of their homes. And so I really like their perspectives and just the importance of growing and their encouragement for moms or educators to continue to grow themselves.
Yes.
Because that is an important part of homeschooling.
Yeah. Well, that's neat. I can second most of your recommendations. You've either let me borrow or we've talked about some. For me, my oldest is going to be going into his kindergarten year, so we're starting to get excited and plan some of the more formal things. But I haven't had much of a chance to put all that reading into practice yet. So tell us a little bit about how this reading and the kind of philosophy and theory you're taking in is working itself out for you with your kids.
So I would say one big thing is that just being present and doing life together. You know, I feel like our culture, especially within the last 100 years, which is really when public schools, compulsory schools started getting pushed and laws being put into place. I think they've done a really good job at trying to tear apart the family, and some things in our life are really worthy endeavors that we go in our different directions towards. However, I really think it's important to be together. Mm-hmm. And so to have a rich family culture where we're engaged with one another on a daily, just everyday task, whether it be sitting around and having meals together, which that in itself will stir up all kinds of conversations.
And opportunities.
Yes. There's a lot. And for growth as a mama, I don't know how many times spilled milk occurs within a week, but
it wants to make you cry.
Yes. So, but just having conversations that are readily, open and available for them, and opportunities to do life together, I think is just critical. Mm-hmm. We often have, during our more formal school hours, we normally start with a morning meeting together and just talk about our day, and we normally talk about that's during our time what expectations for the days will look like, what we're going to read together during that time period, or memorize together, work on memory work. Then I try to, since I have multiple ages, I really think that more the formal parts of curriculum and stuff, I try to let them do as independently as they can, since I do have multiple kids, but I am the teacher, so I still have to be present and be available and teach as needed in certain areas and help in certain areas. Then being outside, that's one for me personally that I really truly have to work on, because it did not, or is not just natural for me to be like, let's go stay outside or be outside. But as I've gotten older, I really have seen the value in just being outside and learning your surroundings and what makes up the world we live in and how things work. How things grow, living creatures. That's something that, you mentioned the homestead. That's something for us that it has been enjoyable for our kids to be able to see living creatures from the beginning of their life to the end of their life. Yeah. And the importance of taking care of them well and responsibly and treating them with respect. And so I think that there are opportunities that I just know if we were not together throughout the day, we would just miss out on. And so family worship is another one that's important. And, you wouldn't necessarily say it's formal education, but it's a time that they do learn. They learn more about God's word. They learn about how do you sit still and listen to God's word for a little bit out of the day. Yeah. How do we sing hymns together? What does a hymn book look like? Different things that are not necessarily, they scope and sequence chart, but are important for everyday growth as an individual. Life skills is another huge one that so many people are missing out on now. And it's, every opportunity is an opportunity for learning and growth, I feel like, in our home, if we can make it that. Yeah. So
it really sounds like a whole life approach. You talk about, you have some formal school hours where you do some more school things that we think of as school-like things. And maybe your kids have some independent work, and which is, at a fifth grader and a second grader. And it's wonderful for them to have a time that they're taking this on themselves.
Sure.
And I'm sure that doesn't always look like the way you want it to look like. But they're learning that this is my job to educate myself, because that's a job they're going to continue to have once they grow up. They're not going to have you to teach them their lessons.
True. We can hope.
Yes, hopefully not.
That is the goal. That is the goal.
I think just as you're going about life, you have chores with your homestead, and your kids are there along with you, or maybe you're passing off some responsibility to them, and they're learning all during that time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, one of the things that I feel like is so important is just them doing life and, you know, learning how to do daily tasks. My second grader loves when she gets to make scrambled eggs. And, you know, and that's so exciting to her that she's getting to do that. But that's just one way that she can contribute to a family, and our family specifically. And I am just grateful for opportunities like that are just little things. But, you know, I love when our son gets to do things specific with his daddy or granddaddy, because he can. Yeah. You know, and he's not tied up to a schedule that is strict, and this is what we have to do. And so, you know, I never want to give the impression that you shouldn't plan or you shouldn't think through these things, because it is, I think, vital and important to do so. But I also think that one of the beauties of homeschool is that you do get to do life together, and that if you need to adjust something because this special event's going on, or someone's sick for a week, or whatever the case may be, you have the right to do that. No one's behind you going, you can't change your plan. If something's not working, you know, that's another one. If a kid's just struggling with something, well, maybe we just set that aside and try this different approach or book to it. Or this different, you know, kids have different learning styles. So maybe this kid's going to do better with this situation and way of approaching this than the other child. So I really, I just, that's one of the biggest things that, to me, just being able to be together and do life in a way that is, you know, accustomed and, you know, customizable almost to your needs is just such a blessing,
And so it sounds like, I know that there's perhaps a fear that you won't cover all the stuff you're supposed to cover, you know, that they, you know, there's going to be gaps in your kids' knowledge. And then since you're the teacher, that's like a reflection on you. You left a gap in the education. How do you kind of keep up that spirit of flexibility, as in, you know, I'm looking at my child and what do they need in this circumstance, and what does our family need as a whole? You know, there's just seasons where I call it a baby year. We have a baby, and that's just like, it changes the flow of the whole year.
Absolutely.
How do you keep that level of flexibility and not, you know, you got to teach the kids, they do have to have certain goalposts, but not give into this fear of, oh, I'm not getting to every little detail of this thing.
Well, one thing I would just say is, I was public schooled all my life, and there's all kinds of gaps that I found that I'm like, what? How did I not learn about that? Or maybe I did, and maybe I've just forgotten at this point. Yeah. If I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. That being said, I feel like our goal is to equip our children to be lifelong learners. And if they know how to go and find information that is true and right and good, then I feel like I've done my job. I want them to be able to get to their senior year and be able to choose whether or not they want to go to college and are equipped to do that and have good skills and knowledge to be able to help them succeed in that. That being said, I also, we're never going to be able to do everything all the time perfectly. So I really do go back to, if I have taught them how to find the information and learn and love learning and not just hate it,
Yeah.
and it be drudgery all the time, then I feel like I can measure that as a success.
Yeah.
I do think that there's nothing wrong with looking at where other kids are as far as what they're learning and what they're doing, and you will end up having, at least in the state of Tennessee, we have to be sure we still hit certain checkpoints along the way in order for them to graduate. So there is some accountability there to make sure that they are receiving what they need to receive, but it still is very much just being able to tailor it to what your child's needs are. So.
Yeah. So talking about some of those basics, each state has their own way of doing things, but just kind of the basics of what do you really need to get started? Do you have to buy a labeled kindergarten curriculum to get started with your kid homeschooling? What do you really need?
My answer would be a willing heart. A heart that is willing to learn and grow alongside your children. I needed this reminder, but I also try to tell people who are thinking about starting out that, you are exactly the person your child needs to educate and learn and grow. God has given you these children, and He will equip you. Now, are we enough on our own? No. But with God's grace and His mercies that are new every day, we can do this. And I think a lot of times people feel like you're not qualified or whatever to, teach your children. But if you can learn, you can teach them. And if there's stuff that you're just really uncomfortable with or it's not enjoyable for you, then I say seek help. There are different tutors, there are different dual enrollment options later on in life, just co-ops and groups that can be helpful. Finding a homeschool mom and a friend that's ahead of you, or friends that are ahead of you, to just encourage you and give you ideas and tips and suggestions on what things have worked well for their family and what haven't. I think that's a invaluable gift if you can find those people to speak and help you. I do to say with kindergarten, you're still in the playing years. They need to play. They will learn so much by playing. Now, that doesn't mean you can't start with reading, writing, and arithmetic. But even that does not have to be a box that says, this is what we're going to do from 9 to 11 o'clock today. It can be, let's sit down and go over our letters together and learn to read, and let me read to you. And, reading aloud as a family builds so much. It builds literacy. It builds conversations. It makes them feel loved and relationships grow. And so there's so much good in that, besides just imparting knowledge into your children. So that's one. Playing outside gives so many opportunities for learning about science and math, and being in the kitchen is a natural place for math to transpire. And there's just all kinds of opportunities in our every day-to-day activities. I will say, I was just thinking about it, if you're just starting out and you feel like you need that curriculum, there's nothing wrong with that. If that's what you feel like you need to have to be equipped to do the job, and it gives you confidence and strength and courage, then I say sure, use the box. There's nothing wrong with that. They wouldn't, But that being said, I always tell people, don't be a slave to the curriculum. Let the curriculum serve you. So if it's not serving you, it's okay to say, you know what, we're doing something else, and there's no shame in that. So that's kind of what I would say. And if you're starting out later, like maybe your kids came home and you're like, we're just done with school, and we're going to do home education, then I would start, looking around at different forums online or friends and just try to find connections that can help you and encourage you and help you start out so that you're not just completely blindsided.
Yeah.
So that would be my suggestion.
Yeah. And I like what you said about, if the curriculum, purchasing like a full made curriculum makes you feel comfortable, then that's good. That's what you should do. And I wonder just about, it's amazing different people's personality types that, if you were to hand me a box of curriculum, I'd be like, I'm overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Put it away. But for some people, they love that, and it really helps them.
Structured.
And I've been reading more and more. I think we're going to see more and more scholarly literature and research coming out about play in the early years. I've seen that in the past several years.
Yes.
Studies coming out. It was a group in Tennessee that were looking at play-based preschools versus, early literacy preschools, and that just play is super important in the early years. And I think people are going to be, I hope that every, public schools and other schools will take notice of that type of research also, and let kindergarten be play again. Like I hear that it used to be a lot more play-based, but so.
Yes, I do think that's really important for developmental growth and like just their brain development. It often has gotten squandered. And, even my 10 or 11-year-old now, I'm still telling him, go outside and play and just get bored, because you need that. You need to figure out how to do stuff and how to come up with stuff. And it just makes your brain think in ways you might not if you're just formally sitting down with a book and reading. And I love reading. Huge advocate. But I'm just saying, it's good for children to play, and even playing to learn. We often will do memory work and try to integrate fun and play into that. And it helps both for kinetic learners and auditory learners and just visual learners. It hits all the different learning styles.
Yes.
And so I think it's really something that we can tap into more if we choose to, especially in those little years.
Yeah. So, you've taken, an hour away while your husband's keeping all of our kids. So thanks to Phillip, and to come talk about this so that other people can listen and hopefully find encouragement. What makes you so passionate about seeing other families have the courage to homeschool?
Again, I think, and it's not just I think, I'm like, the Lord tells us that children are a blessing. And they are people. They are little people, just starting out from here to, grown-ups. But they're people. And our culture, I just feel like it's a dangerous place to send your kid to school these days. I never want to be critical of parents and their choices, because every family has different things going on in their lives. My circumstances are not the same as yours or whoever else's. That being said, public school is not the same thing it was even 20 years ago. And I just feel like it's a very dangerous environment. We would never send our kids in a room full of inappropriate things and say good luck. At least most of us would not. And we would be cautious and concerned if there was an atmosphere where that was the case. But you just don't ever know what's being taught, whether through the teacher or peers. And I also am like, it is a public school, so the curriculum is going to be picked by people with an agenda. Does their agenda and their beliefs match up with what the Bible says, is something that I think is an important question to ask. And currently the answer is no. I don't think that we can shelter our kids for all of their lives and never expose them to anything. But right now, to me, my job is to expose them to truth and what's beautiful and good, and to help them walk through the areas which aren't those things. And again, I just am like, I just want to do what I can in my own family to raise kids who will ultimately want to glorify the Lord through their lives, and to have their own families, and to continue this, adventure that we're on that's life. And so, people who, I would say, people can seek courage, and it's sometimes scary to do something that's unfamiliar. And I am encouraged over these past few years that homeschooling has become more popular, and you can find more resources and help than were there when your parents were homeschooling you guys. So I am very encouraged that there are resources now, and I think that if you have the desire to do it, that there is the support there if you seek after it. And ultimately, our encouragement can come from the Lord, and He's going to bless our endeavors if we're trying to do our best to, raise these little image bearers into young, virtuous men and women who want to further the gospel and further the kingdom. So, I would just say it's okay to go into it kind of scared, but you can have courage through the Lord, and He will help in us.
When you were speaking about, your passion for why you are homeschooling, I thought of how time is such a valuable resource. And as your kids are getting older, your second graders home the other day, oh, my brother, he's going to be 13 soon. And then it's just a few years and he'll be in college. And I was saying, don't tell your mama that. No. But you're starting to see how fast it goes. And so in choosing this, which has many difficulties, it can be financially difficult. It can be like emotionally, spiritually a little difficult as you're having to learn how to, be patient and have self-control, and also learning how to do stuff you're not comfortable with. Maybe, maybe you never envisioned yourself teaching long division. You're like, oh, I have to teach long division somehow. But that you're doing all that because you realize time is so valuable, and you would rather have that richness of time with your kids while they're here than, it's a privilege for any other person to get time with your kids.
Yeah. This is not what I would want people to take away, but I just remember having a few conversations during 2020, and some people brought their kids home and were like, oh, this is scary, and I don't know what I'm doing, and nothing's going right, but they were happy to be together. And then some parents came up to me and was just like, you must have the patience of Job. I don't know how in the world you are taking care of those children, and they're driving me crazy, and like all this. And I'm just like, and it kind of broke my heart in many ways, because I was like, this should be perceived as a gift to have time with your kids, because it is limited. And, I don't know exactly why God designed the family the way He did, but it's very specific to the ideal of what that should look like is dad, mom, and children. And so if He has entrusted us with these gifts, then I just feel like it's our responsibility and our job to steward them the best we can, and to give them the best tools and equip them to someday be a grown-up and to figure out how to do this on their own without mom and dad. And so I just think modeling through daily life is so critical. And I often worry about, oh, I hope they're getting a good representation of what a mama should be, because I feel like I fail miserably some days. But I also am just like, that's where the gospel comes in, and sanctification. And so I feel like the more we grow together and grow as a family, the more we all can just go further towards sanctification in that process. And, I know that kids are not easy, but the time is limited. And, I heard someone, which I never like thinking about it, but you have this many more summers with your child. And I always hate it, but I'm like, that hits close to home, especially with our older ones are growing. And I just have to remind myself that is my goal, though, that they do grow up into well-rounded members of this world and society. And so I want them to be able to succeed and have a good life. And so, that's the goal, is that they are responsible people who can function and who can glorify the Lord in the process. So
yeah, definitely. Well, thanks for sharing how just you're thinking through, a biblical, what does the Bible say about family? How can I use my time wisely since the days are short? And how that's worked out for you and your family and in your decision to homeschool. I think that people will find it really helpful, and I hope that it encourages somebody who maybe was on the fence about, I can't do it, that, that you can, not in your own strength, like you said, but because God is going to equip you to raise your own kids. It wasn't an accident that he gave you the kids you have. So thank you so much for taking your time to talk with us. And I would encourage people that if you have questions or comments about our conversation, that you would leave some comments, and maybe we could get a discussion going about, these really exciting topics. So thanks, Megan, for being with us today.
I appreciate you having me.